Hi, hello, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Luigi A. Martinez, your teacher in Introduction to the Philosophy of the Human Person. So for today, we're going to talk about the first cause or the highest principles. So this will be the objectives of our lesson: to comprehend the first cause or the highest principles as a guide for philosophical truth, and to realize the value of the highest principles in relation to acquiring meaningful and holistic perspective in life. The highest principle will not only serve as a guide for right thinking or reasoning, but a never-ending pursuit for the reason to live. The first cause or the highest principles has four components. We have principles of identity, principles of non-contradiction, principles of excluded middle, and principles of sufficient reason. So let's now discuss one of the components of the highest principles, which is principles of identity, which states that whatever is, whatever is not, everything is what it is, everything is its own being, and not being is not being. So in other words, A is A, B is not A, therefore B is non-A. So to understand the perspective of this concept, let's first define the meaning of identity. Identity is defined as the relation that a thing bears only to itself. It only means that every being has its own identity, a trait perhaps or a characteristic that determine their existence. In philosophy, essence and identity complements one another. Essence, on the other hand, is defined as a trait or characteristics that makes a thing what it is. So in a nutshell, this is an apple, an edible fruit that is cultivated around the world. The apple is the identity which everyone recognizes. While the unique taste, the sweetness, and the heart shape of the fruit are the obvious characteristics that made an apple an apple. So let's say take one of the traits. The apple's fruit suddenly changed its properties. Take its extracts and add water and other substance turns the apple fruit into another identity, an apple juice. Therefore, the traits that have been lost, its shape and textures, are the essence, and once lost, alter the identity of the object. To give you another example, how about this? A hammer. We can say that the hammer's purpose is to pummel or thump an object like nails. So take the hammer's capabilities, alter its identity. Therefore, the essence of the hammer is its purpose, and being a hammer is its identity. So given that examples, we already addressed the difference between essence and identity and how it complements one another. So let's now proceed to the principles of identity, which states that A is A, B is not A, therefore B is non-A. It only means that an identity of an object cannot be the same with the other thing. So for example, this is an apple, and this is obviously not an apple, because common sense, it does not have the same properties. Easy, right? But this is philosophy class, and this subject really complicates things. So are you ready? Let's have a thought experiment to further our knowledge on principles of identity. So there was a 700-year-old clock that stand on the test of time. It survives wars, famines, natural catastrophes, and plenty of repairs and maintenance. So for the longest time as it exists, the clock, due to its constant repairs, needed to change its parts. And for several hundred years, all the original parts of the clock has been replaced. Not only that, even the owner or the keeper of the clock changed too, and through generations becomes an inheritance, and later on as a state property due to its historical significance. So the question is the clock the same or identical to the 700-year-old clock, the original clock? Then why? So if the objects are the same or identical, it's considered as having an identical relation. A coffee mug in the store, which is considerably cosmetically identical, they are obviously the same. Or an identical twin. Of course, you might say that they are, as the name suggests, identical. But on the contrary, each sibling has its own unique personality. Somehow, the other twin is jolly, while the other is dead serious and melodramatic and prefer to be alone. How about this? An apple again. We have red and green apple, yet they are both considered as an apple. So it only means that the color of the apple is nothing to do with its essence. The color of the apple is considered as an accidental properties. So accidental properties is an attribute or characteristics that once have been lost, the thing remain as it is. Change the color of an apple, it's still an apple. Or cut the tail of your dog, it will remain a dog. That is accidental properties. So kapag ba nawala siya sa buhay mo, your identity will also be meaningless? If yes, that person is an essence. If no, cheer up. There's a plenty of fish in the ocean. You can simply replace that person. Therefore, he or she is either an accidental properties or an essence to you. So now let's go back to the thought experiment and answer the riddle. Is the clock identical to the clock 700 years ago? According to Heraclitus, everything changes, but change itself. Everything flows and nothing remains the same. You cannot step twice into the same river, for other waters, and yet others go flowing ever on. So from the words coming from this ancient philosopher, it's very clear the very first time the parts of the clock have been replaced, the clock is not identical to the latter, because the clock changed its parts. No more original parts. And for this philosopher, everything undergo change. According to the 17th century philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, if any two things are identical, then they must share all the same properties. This principle is called indiscernibility of identicals. So as soon as its parts were all original, then the clock suddenly acquired a new property. A new property means a new identity. Therefore, if Heraclitus and Leibniz is right, the clock is undoubtedly not the same. If you are not impressed with their assumption, come up with your own judgment whether the clock in the present is different from the original clock. Because again, this is philosophy, and we always love to criticize and ask a lot of questions. So another thing, what if I steal 100 pesos in your wallet and replace it with another 100 peso bill? Will you get mad? Or I accidentally broke your watch that your mother gave to you as a gift, and I replace it with the same watch. Will you still be mad? The 100 peso and the watch that I have replaced, will they be the same, or you will haunt my conscience forever? So the two above examples, the bill and the watch, can have a cosmetically identical. But how can we discern the difference? So the 100 peso bill that I exchanged to you, do you think they are the same, or the watch that your mother gave you? So to answer that principle comes with the principles of fungibility. According to this principle, the fungibility is the property of being interchangeable with other objects of the same kind. So if I steal your 100 peso bill, you will not get mad because the value or the worth that I replace is interchangeable, given that the two bills can buy the same amount on the sari-sari store. Therefore, it's fungible. But on the other hand, the watch that I broke is not fungible. Although it's cosmetically identical, the watch is not value based on its physical features or its monetary value, but rather on the sentimental attached to it. The watch will never be the same again. So please don't kill me. We are now done on the principles of identity. So let's now head on to the next principles in philosophy, the principles of non-contradictions, which states that it is impossible for a thing to be and not to be at the same time and at the same respect. For example, a man cannot run and walk at the same time, or a statement cannot be true or not true. If the statement or an identity oppose one another, it fails to comply on these principles. Therefore, it's not truth anymore. So if someone tells you, I love you but I hate you, it fails to the principles of non-contradiction. So therefore, they are not telling you the truth. Next is the principles of excluded middle, which states that a thing is either is or is not. Everything must be either be or not be. Between being and not being, there is no middle ground. In these principles, there should be no maybe or it depends, for the truth should be always absolute. If the being or a thing is what it should not fall from either be or the middle ground. And last but not the least, the principles of sufficient reason, which states that nothing exists without sufficient reason for its being and existence. Whatever the being is, whether they are small, big, strong, or weak, its existence is essential to himself, to others, and to the world. And as we venture ourselves, nurturing every bit of our existence, knowing ourselves, our identity, let us not forget to forge our life with consistency to the truth, without contradicting what we believe in and the principles that we follow. Our ideals and aspirations should manifest to our actions. And as a human person, imbued with the capacity to love and care for others, let us not forget that our primary reason in life is to coexist with the other beings, with compassion and empathy that should be sufficient reason for our existence.